If you love college football, you've got a passion for college football, love the games, the rivalries, like to debate and discuss it, please follow me on Twitter at MarkRogersTV and we will talk college football. You know from watching my video posts that I like to compare the conferences, like to look at those non-conference matchups between the power conferences, the BCS conferences, and try to analyze who has the best conference, second, third, fourth, and fifth. This time, I'm not going to use cold hard data. We're just going to compare conferences team for team, match them up, and I'm going to let you know who I think would win the matchup. Then I want to hear from you. So over the next several weeks, we're going to match up the conferences. We're going to start with a basketball matchup here, the ACC Big Ten Challenge, but not basketball this time. We're talking football. Let's run it down. So 12 teams in the Big Ten, 14 in the ACC, so we had to take two out of the ACC, so we took them right out of the middle. Maryland, ironically, who's joining the Big Ten next season, gone, and Wake Forest, gone. They were the two middle teams in the ACC. So let's go top to bottom, then we want to hear from you. Okay, we've got Florida State, dominant team in college football, of course, taking on Ohio State, 2 unbeatens, 3-4 in the BCS rankings. We believe Florida State has the edge here. Okay, if these two teams play 10 times, we think it's 5-5. We know the Buckeyes haven't been quite as impressive. That's why we're going Florida State here. The defense has been dominant. Ohio State's defense until the Penn State game, a bit shaky. But we think that's a great matchup. And of course, if you follow the Vegas lines, you know it's 3 points for a home team. These are going to be played theoretically on neutral ground. Okay, got Clemson taking on Michigan. The Tigers looked very, very competitive for a BCS championship early in the season, not so much against Florida State. They've had down games against NC State and Boston College. Michigan would win this game against Clemson. Call me crazy, but Wolverines win it. They had 4 regular season losses last year. Played a top 6 or 7 South Carolina team, took it to the last 7 seconds. That South Carolina team took it to Clemson by 2 touchdowns. We like Michigan over Clemson. Clemson's defense still very shaky. All right, we've got a nice matchup with Miami taking on Michigan State. The Spartans have lost once. That was on the road at Notre Dame by 4 points. Miami's undefeated, their best win against Florida. That win not looking so good despite the Gators' injuries at this point. Miami, again, 8-0 on the season. Michigan State 7-1. This would be a fun one to watch. They would slug it out with running games and defense. But Michigan State has a much, much better defense than Miami. The Spartans have one of the top 5 or 10 defenses in college football. Stephen Morris makes too many mistakes. We know Michigan State, at times, deplorable on offense, but they get the job done and defeat Miami right there. Okay, now we've got a matchup of Virginia Tech and Wisconsin. Wisconsin with 2 losses, Tech with 2 losses. Tech lost to Bama and Duke. Duke's horrible. I know they're 6-2, but they're not 6-2 good. Wisconsin's a much better football team than Virginia Tech. They've got a ground game that would run it down the Hokies' throats. Wisconsin wins it. That second loss we know was taken from them by the referees at Arizona State. And the other game at Columbus against Ohio State, a 7-point loss. Wisconsin, very undervalued here. Badgers win it over the Hokies. Okay, we've got the next matchup of Nebraska taking on Georgia Tech. Nebraska looked awful against Minnesota on the road last week. Nebraska is not a very good football team, talking top 25 status. Nebraska still has Taylor Martinez, Amir Abdullah, and Kenny Bell on offense. They've got explosive playmakers on offense. The Georgia Tech running game is lethal as usual, but they've got issues defensively and cannot throw the football at all. Nebraska wins a shootout over Georgia Tech in this one. Remember Nebraska getting torched by Ohio State and Wisconsin last year, but still faced a top 5 Georgia team and took them to the wire. All right, we've got Duke and Penn State. ACC fans are going to kill me, but again, Penn State wins this game over Duke. There's no way Penn State doesn't defeat Duke. Don't see it happening. Christian Hackenberg having a banner day against that Duke defense, and Nittany Lions win it. Okay, we got Pitt in Minnesota, and despite the Golden Gophers record at 6-2, 4 non-conference wins are not impressive. The Nebraska game, we shall see what that says about both teams down the stretch. Pitt, much better team than Minnesota right at this point. We know the record doesn't match it up, but we like Pitt edging Minnesota in a tough matchup there. Take the Panthers. Okay, then we've got Syracuse and Northwestern. They've already played. Northwestern defeated Syracuse. Man, we got one in the bank right there, and we can't really argue that one despite Northwestern's recent difficulties in losing 4 consecutive games. Iowa and North Carolina. What kind of Tar Heels team do you get? They played Miami to the wire a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday night at home to the last 15 seconds. Iowa played the Buckeyes of Ohio State very close in Columbus. 2 marginal football teams. We certainly like Iowa and their defense over North Carolina. Okay, Indiana scores a ton. They take on Boston College. The Hoosiers, again, under Kevin Wilson, can throw it all over the field. They make plays. They would score some points against Boston College, but the Eagles would pound them on the ground. Indiana's horrible on defense. They still haven't fixed it. Boston College wins over Indiana. Okay, we got NC State and Illinois, and we're getting to the bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten and the ACC. So throw up the coin and look at heads or tails. Illinois, North Carolina State, we're going to go with NC State in this matchup against Illinois. And finally, Virginia and Purdue. Purdue is a really bad football team. They can't stop anyone, can't generate points. I don't know what's happened to the talent, but we expect Coach Hazel to turn things around eventually at Purdue, but it's not happening this season. Virginia, despite their issues as the worst team in the ACC right now, beats Purdue. So the bottom, very bottom of the ACC, maybe a bit better than the Big Ten. The Big Ten deeper, much deeper up top. You could make a case that Florida State, Clemson, and Miami are better than what the Big Ten brings, possibly, but certainly the Big Ten's top half much better than the ACC. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a 7-5 win for the Big Ten over the ACC. Now it's your turn to match up the Big Ten and the ACC right here on Mark Rogers TV.